spelled the same, but sounds the same. She's joining us from customer billing. She's had some experience with tenant billing, so ironically, she's very familiar with our leases, and also she's had some experience in code enforcement, so we're very excited to have her. She has her degree in finance, and you want to tell us a little bit about your background and what you're excited to learn about in the CRA?
I'm just excited to help the community and be involved.
We're very excited to have her. She's very good at what she's done in her experience. She's going to be hitting her 10 years in August. So she's experienced with the city, so we're very excited to have her. She's our new project associate, so I wanted to make sure the advisory board was able to welcome her to the team.
Welcome. And first name was Sandra?
Sandra. Sorry about that.
We have another project.
So how does that cover you on staffing now?
So we still have 2 vacancies, 2 project managers, and we've closed our application, our reopening of the application, so we can consolidate the candidate pool, and we're trying to move into selecting those candidates for interviews.
Okay. Okie dokie.
All right. And let me just move these slides along so we're in our updates. We can move into the financial update, project trackers, and the new manager's report, which you have in your packets. We can run through those if there's any questions with the incentives. You can see all of the these are just active projects at this time. We're trying to continuously improve how we present this to you monthly, so if you see changes, that's why. We're trying to streamline what you see every month, and just so you can see a true representation of what's allocated for each project. And open that in case there's some. I do have a few specific updates on the project progression report, which is your page 3. I can mention the update from last month. I had an inaccurate release date for the 5 Points Roundabout. That RFP for construction is scheduled to go out in April. So that design and permitting is completed for that construction project. Those are the streets that come together behind RP Funding Center at Sloan Avenue, Main, and Lemon, and on the north shore of Lake Beulah. And that is scheduled for a release for contractors to bid on the project. So
that's where the traffic light is.
Where the traffic light is, yes. And we call it 5 Points. Technically, there's 4 roads there. There was a 5th road, and that's turned into a small cul-de-sac, but we can't let go of the name. So we just love 5 Points. So that's scheduled to be moving forward for contractors to bid on the project. Also, moving down Oak Street development, you saw that exterior design package last month. It did move forward to commission. It received its approval, so it's now moving through site plan review, and we're working with the developer and their contractor on the mobilization of traffic, or maintenance of traffic, MOT, and trying to make sure that we coordinate with all of the downtown businesses and property owners surrounding that project, so they're aware of it well before it's ready to break ground, so we can make sure all that communication is out in the public arena, and we can make sure everyone's concerns are noted so we can have everyone prepared for that. Also down to Central Avenue, Olive Street pedestrian improvements. We did a site visit last week. Or was it this week? I can't remember now. Was it this week? That is designed and permitted. Construction has begun at the corner of Olive Street.
At the 4-way stop.
At the 4-way stop. So that is underway, and I don't think it's going to take very long, but it's a very busy street, so Public Works, our construction and maintenance team, is out there daily. So if you have a chance to drive by, you'll see some really cool sidewalks getting put in on Olive Street. And then moving downtown West Master Plan, we did have our first public meeting on February 16th, and our consultant and the city and CRA team received some public feedback. And that's not going to be the only chance for public feedback. We're working on an online platform, or at least a way to continue gathering that initial feedback. And I also intend to go out to a few of the neighborhoods and have at least a presentation and some one-on-one conversations with the neighborhoods to get their feedback as well. And I think there were some concerns shared at the public meeting, so I hope to follow up with each of those neighborhoods and gather some more of their individual concerns with just what is this plan, what are the future improvements, what does it look like, and also get that so we can roll that into what the planning document looks like, so we can bring that back to you all for some feedback and input as well. Something that the chair and I spoke about earlier this week is possibly bringing to you all an update from our, and I'm not sure what Chuck's official title is, but he wears many hats. Chuck Barmby is our development review manager.
Yeah, Transportation Development Review.
Transportation and Development Review. At the Commission's strategic planning retreat, he did a presentation, a very thorough, high-level presentation of so many road projects that are very important to the city. And as you can see in our project progression report, there's so many of them, there's a piece of CRA funding contributing to those road projects. And there's a larger piece or component of that DOT or other funding commitments are coming together to make those road projects a reality. So I think it's important that the advisory board sees this big picture and then sees how the CRA plays a role in that. We're just a small piece of it, and there's a lot of layers to getting those road projects moving forward. So I think that a future meeting date where Chuck can review just all of these road projects, some are within the CRA, some are not, and how does that affect the entire network of transportation citywide. So I think that would be helpful for you all to hear that at a future date. And moving into the finance reports, I wanted you all to see a different perspective on just how the finances are moving forward. And each district is reported differently. I wanted you to see what the final expenses were, revenues and expenses for fiscal year 22, what was budgeted for FY 23, and then you can see in blue is kind of our current period, what's been received and spent in our current month of last month, February, and then what we've encumbered. That's just funds that we know we have set aside because there's a project, there's an incentive that's been awarded, or there's a purchase order allocated for a consultant to do the work. So this is a true snapshot in time of what happened last year, what's been budgeted for this current year, what's happened in this current period, and what we have set aside. So that way you can see, rather than our big circles that were kind of vague and maybe didn't give a full picture of what the finances were in each district. So hopefully it gives you a little better picture of what each district is, where it stands. So I can answer any questions if you all have on any of those items.
I'm curious if you have any idea why the ad valorem taxes went down $50,000 between 22 and 23. The market, or it went up by 50,000. I'm looking at it wrong.
Okay. I can say that in the receivables, the city is the only contributor at this point. The county holds back and doesn't necessarily pay up front because there's a process in the tax roll process where they wait until the Value Adjustment Board finalizes its value, and Harry knows this very well. So they wait to pay their portion into the CRA trust fund. So that's why you'll see the revenues aren't fully there, but they will be. So we're okay. There's not a reason for that to be low. It's a lot to digest. We can certainly, if you have questions later, you can always call or email me and we can review individually, or we can discuss now.
Now, does the unappropriated surplus from the previous year always roll over?
It does. It does. So that, what you could see from FY 22 final, that unappropriated surplus from the year prior was what was not spent from FY 21, and that rolled over into FY 23, and then whatever we do not spend from FY 23 will roll over into our FY 24.
Okay, so you never lose those funds?
Never lose those funds. They always stay within the trust fund.
Okay.
Any other questions? And please don't hesitate if you have feedback on just how this could be presented better. We can certainly take that feedback and continuously improve the way we present our information. So moving into manager's report, this is just a summary of just big items that we've kind of worked on as a team or as we've been moving really big items forward within the CRA. And so a few things I want to highlight are just I don't even know what number bullet this is, I should probably number it, but halfway down the page, the strategic planning retreat, key insights for future consideration of the CRA, or just some of the items that the different departments reviewed, and really within our department, Community and Economic Development, they had the opportunity to review just what TIF incentives and P3 developments were able to deliver within the past year, and what the value brings in property increases, and also what impacts they bring into development and infill development specifically. They also reviewed Munn Park. Of course, that's a big topic for redeveloping the park and what that impact does for downtown. And this is not just a CRA consideration. This is multiple stakeholders. And we have an economic development coffee crew, and that's between the Downtown Development Authority, the Lakeland Economic Development Council, and Community Economic Development Department and CRA. And we just talked about, what does that look like? And really, it's just the sidewalk cafes, and if there's a feasible way to move that forward, if all streets need it, if only certain streets could receive the benefit of that. And then, of course, within the strategic planning retreat, there was a discussion about affordability in housing and just the value of projects that have moved forward, and then how we can continue to maximize bringing affordable housing into our community. So then the following bullet point is I had a meeting with the OCC for just the banks that are within our area, our metropolitan area, and the CDFIs. Those are Community Development Finance. I forgot what the I stood for. I'll get back to that. And just meeting their Community Reinvestment Act compliance and how we can leverage that for a new initiative, which is the Small Business Financial Wellness Programs. You do have that on your agenda for discussion items, so I'll hold that for a follow-up. The next page, we did host the Downtown West meeting. Those are some of the key insights that we received from that. And I think that neighborhood representatives that did attend were mostly from North Lake Wire. There was a strong desire for just more sidewalks, safe connections, and the desire for infill development on vacant properties, making them affordable and comparable to the existing neighborhood, and a really strong desire to connect to Bonnet Springs Park. And that should be a connection for pedestrians and bicyclists, not just for vehicle traffic. So those were some insights, just a high-level overview of the activity from last month.
Quick question, and this kind of came to mind after we met Tuesday. We talk about connectivity to Bonnet Springs, and I think either when I was talking to Chuck or Blake, the possibility of pedestrian bridge, and I know city commissioners have talked about pedestrian bridges going from the RP Funding Center over into the Peachtree project. Mm-hmm. Well, Bonnet Springs is actually a private entity, so to run, like if you're going to run a pedestrian bridge across from Kathleen Road over into Bonnet Springs. So if you ran it across Kathleen Road where the pedestrian bridge came over right in front of the area of the Children's Museum and their little cafeteria there, what role would or financial input would Bonnet Springs play in that, since they're that private entity and the city or state or feds would be doing that project? Do they approve that? Do they, since it's their property, would it be their request to have a bridge like something like that going there?
Those are all great questions. I think that would be a continuing conversation with the board of Bonnet Springs Park, and making sure that if there's easement access needed, there's there's a continued conversation and desire to make those accessible connections.
Yeah, it just came to mind because we're talking about those things, but is that something they really want? What they would actually want?
I do think they want those connections. I think they realize that the development of the park was their first main challenge, and they wanted to make sure they could get to opening. And now their investment and their involvement in community outreach and just participation in our public meeting, David Bunch was there to make sure that, the awareness of those needed connections was on the forefront of his desire to.
Yeah, because people have approached me since that meeting on, the big discussion was about downtown West, and then, is Bonnet Springs part of downtown West, or is, Bonnet Springs getting money from CRA, or are they taking, if they're private, why are they getting money from the CRA to do this or that? And I said, well, Bonnet Springs really wasn't built with city money or CRA money, so there's still some misconception in the community about downtown West in its entirety, and then the different parts of downtown West. How does that tie together with the different parts of the CRA, and how money flows in and out of those projects? Or does money flow in and out of those projects from city or CRA?
Sure. I don't know that Bonnet Springs received any incentives from the city or CRA. It was all privately built, acquired, developed. With their ability to fundraise and gain sponsorships to build each element, there was no incentives by city or CRA.
There may have been levels of assistance on a utility side, or maybe some roads that got vacated through the development process early on as the neighborhood was replatted. But with regards to city or CRA, no real financial.
Yeah, and I was like 99.9% sure of that, and I know some state funding came in for some of the cleanup and environmental stuff they had to do there.
Right. And I do think there's an additional funding source coming for the Lake Bonnet, and I think it's going through stormwater and lakes for some restoration of the lake. But that's not necessarily the park's responsibility. I think it's through the city, and that's for the cleanup of the lake itself. Okay. Any other questions on the manager's report?
Thanks for providing. Yeah, that's really helpful.
I'll try my best to do something every month, and if you have questions, certainly I'm available anytime. I wanted to also follow up. You had asked about just the schedule for the Neighborhood Association Coalition meetings, so I do have that attached. And something I wasn't aware of is that they have subcommittees as part of the coalition, so those are attached. Just if you have any desire or interest to provide input or participate. I don't know if any of you are in any of the neighborhood associations and might have a desire to participate in their subcommittees. So just moving right along, we do have the FRA, the Florida Redevelopment Association conference. I wanted to get that on your radar. That's in October, and those dates are attached. But something else that's available to all of you is the academy that they offer, and that's something that is typically offered at the conference, but they do offer them throughout the year. And two courses I think that would be beneficial for the advisory board are CRA 101 and Planning Strategically for Redevelopment. So I've highlighted those courses in the packet. They are coming up. There's one on April 14th and one on June 9th. And if you can't attend either of those, then of course there is CRA 101 offered at conference. So I wanted to put those dates in front of you.
Do we register with them?
You let us know.
Okay.
We'll take care of it just the same as we would for conference. And if you are, they are, the two courses, if they're not at conference, they're in Orlando. And you would have to, make us aware of what your availability is, and we can help coordinate that. But those two courses are pretty helpful. CRA 101 is just what it sounds like. It's just an overview of what CRAs are, what they do, what we're legislatively allowed to do, and then what other CRA, it gives good examples. It allows you to network with other CRA professionals, and then then planning strategically for redevelopment gets a little deeper. It's a little bit like what we're evaluating in the Downtown West study, and just how to take an area and understand, how do you peel back the layers and plan to redevelop a neighborhood or a commercial corridor, and it just gets a little deeper into what redevelopment work can be. So these are opportunities available to you if you have time and would so desire to pursue them. I wanted to make you aware of it.
Is the CRA 101 content the same or similar to what we did at the county level?
With Jeff Burton? No.
Totally different?
This is more of the staff side. This is teaching you from a staff perspective. So Jeff Burton's course is, you're an elected official or an advisory board member, and here's what you do from voting and guiding how staff presents information to you. CRA 101 is you're a staff member now, and here's how you learn to be a redevelopment professional.
Okay, so
It's just a
even
little-
the course we took in, the course they gave on CRA 101 in Daytona, that was more from a advisory board and
Yes.
board member.
This is if you choose, you want to get just a little deeper into the redevelopment world. It's
Sign me up for all of it. I'll put it on my calendar, spending nothing.
And that's
Pretty
one,
helpful.
that's a
I'll go to all of it.
1 day.
It's a full day.
Full-
It's,
yeah.
it's pretty much 8 to 5. So just plan on, that
In Orlando.
being a full commitment.
Okay.
And just FYI, they do offer a test for these courses because it is academy. So they offer testing for certification. That's completely optional. It's not It's not something you need to pursue. But I think the coursework and just the lessons that they give and then the examples they give is pretty helpful. It's not optional for the staff. Shelley's been through quite a few courses. Sandra's going to be getting started. So that's why I thought it'd be great to share with the advisory board. Those are all the updates, other than after this meeting, I am asking if all of you can stay. I've scheduled us for a group photo at 11:30 downstairs in the lobby. We're going to be going outside City Hall, so if you can,
Okay.
I'm going to get your photo.
11:30 today.
Yes.
Got this. It's a good thing I put on my makeup today.
Everybody have a chance to look at the meeting minutes from February 2nd?
Yes, we have a change. On page 15, second paragraph, I would just like to see the words, it says Katie Martinez questioned the co-working space, stating it might deter people from leaving the building. That was my concern. And just delete the "and affect businesses who offer co-working spaces." That was not my concern.
Any other changes, comments, corrections to the minutes? If not, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes with that correction.
Motion.
Motion. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Peachtree Flats.
Before we move into that, Valerie, can I ask a question on our progress with new members to the board as we're looking and adding to our team?
Yes, among other things, yes. I have applications that I have received via online or via direct referral, so I have them on my list to contact and interview. So that's how the process has worked in the past. If I receive applications, because it's been advertised, as you can imagine, we've received quite a few inquiries, and if they've applied directly or they've called, I've tried to be fair and at least respond and list everyone so that I could make those interviews. And with that interview process, it's just to make sure that that individual is aware of what the work is that we do, and to make sure that they have the time available to attend meetings and to be available to participate in all of the extra activities that sometimes are required, and to make sure that their interests are aligned with what the CRA goals are, and that there may not be a potential conflict as we move forward with decisions that could affect potential business interests or personal interests of that individual. So it can be a little arduous of a process, because now I have quite a few from each of the openings interested. So I am working through that list.
Awesome, thank you.
So you have more than one application for each opening?
For each, yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I saw that like one now.
Yes. It's like, that's great.
Okay,
Now
here we
there's
go.
no more. But that's okay. I appreciate the interest, but it takes a little time to weed through the candidates.
Good
So-
news, bad news.
Good news, bad news. So it takes a little longer, but it's worth it, because then the right candidate, will be presented for acceptance by the municipal boards and committee, and then they're accepted, and then they are to resume their service. Okay. Peachtree Flats, Development Infrastructure, Site and Infrastructure Incentive. So most of you were on, Christine, I don't know if you were on, okay. So I'll give a little more background for Christine's benefit and for those that might be listening. Peachtree Flats, which is, the owner is Lakewire Apartments LLC. They had presented a TIF agreement. It was technically approved by City Commission, CRA Board in November, but you all saw this in October. And what was actually approved was 75% reimbursement of property taxes over 5 years after the project is complete. But the original request, as some of you may recall, was a 75% over 10 years. And so that was a subject of some discussion at this level. And if you may recall, that was the reason for that was the extent of the development. And the reason for that is this site is I believe, did I put the size of the acreage? It's about 1.6 acres, Greg? 1.6 acres, and they are constructing 84 units. And as you can see, it's 4 stories, and it's all enclosed corridor. They're putting in elevators, and they're also constructing a parking structure. So the enclosure of the site, I'll flip over to the site plan. The parking structure will be on the north side of the lot, of the parcel, which will be probably combined once they move into planning. And then the building with the residential units will be to the south, hugging the Peachtree Street and overlooking North Lakewire. So the original request was 75% over 10 years, just because of the nature of the construction, the nature of the development, and also the high value of amenities that they were trying to incentivize or try to offer their residents. So as you can see inside the development, they're trying to put their amenities into the interior, similar to the donut that we saw on Oak Street. And with the cost of a parking structure and developing on an urban infill site, there's a lot of work to be done on such a tight lot. So this property has not seen development for quite some time. There is an existing structure on the site that they would have to remove and clear the land. And there's also some infrastructure costs that they're having to encounter. So there's no stormwater pond that they have room to build for. They have to put the stormwater underground. So that's an underground detention vault. We've seen that in another project before. And there's also three-phase primary power that is not anywhere near the site. They have to bring that from MLK and George Jenkins Boulevard to the site in order to bring primary power to the site. Some of the other elements that, and let me go back to the TIF just for Christine's benefit before jumping ahead. I don't know why I can't navigate this. Sorry. So with that TIF request, that was why they had asked for that extensive 10-year at 75%. They said this is a very expensive project. We want to bring a high-quality development to this area, but it's very expensive. So in other TIF requests, they had seen that, and they said, we think it's viable because you've awarded it to another. So in our discussion at the CRA advisory board level, I had asked the advisory board to please let us work with possibly bringing back an infrastructure component to this, because there's no sustainable model in giving TIF for such a long period of time. because of the impacts to downtown budget, and you heard that at the retreat. So I had asked if the advisory board would consider giving us a shorter period of time, but then the modification or the compromise the advisory board gave was, how about 75% at 5 years? And so I think that was comparable. It may not have been what the developer had asked for, but it was something that we could work with. So then we came back, we took that agreement to the commission. Commission said, okay, we'll consider it, and we'll consider the additional component for infrastructure. So Greg is here with Lakewire Apartments, LLC. They did come back to me. We had a few meetings to discuss what their additional infrastructure budget looked like. And we also refined that, so it wasn't just their guesstimate. They did go back, and they've gotten comments from the city, from Lake Electric, from water utilities. They've gone through most of their site plan review. I think it did receive site plan approval very recently through the 20th, February 20th. I think I saw a recent email. So these are the elements that I think we can cover because they're comparable to other projects that we've incentivized. So I was focusing in on the public realm, things that the public would see and be able to engage in. They're things that we would see driving around the project. Even if we're not a resident, we would be able to enjoy what the street lighting is, what the sidewalk and the crosswalk upgrades are, and also the street side landscaping and irrigation. But when we incentivize infrastructure, we're also incentivizing future development. So bringing that three-phase power over, that helps incentivize future development of those vacant lots next to or around this property. Also with underground stormwater detention, we've done that on another project because otherwise they have to build a pond and they have to make sure that they have room for that pond, and that limits the size of the property or the development that they can even build, and that minimizes the value of what's being returned into our trust fund. So with that being said, that's what we've proposed as being covered under this incentive. And just for a recap of what those numbers look like before, the requested TIF that they asked for, 75% at 10 years, was totaling roughly $1.2 million. The final approved, we estimated 75%, I can't say it, 75% for 5 years was roughly $634,000. With the proposed improvements we just reviewed, we were trying to round up a not to exceed number of $775,000. That brings their new total up to $1.4 million. And that's over a 5-year period or during the time of construction, because the infrastructure, we would be essentially working with them during construction of the site. I also want to note, I've put this here because the TIF calculation was based on total site construction, building and site, and a base value of $734,268. That includes the building. So when they remove the building, it'll be back to vacant land, and that vacant land will be valued way less. So we have some room for error in how we've calculated TIF. The TIF could be very well a little less. So our total contribution, we're looking into a crystal ball, and we're trying to guess what our TIF contribution will be. And that's the same with all of our TIF agreements. We can do a very close job at guessing what we're going to be contributing, but we won't know until the project is built and valued by the property appraiser to know what our actual commitment's going to be. We found that with Meriton. We found that with the Garden Apartments. As projects come online, we will continue to refine how we value our TIF contributions, which is why they're not the most reliable in incentivizing any project. What we can count on is how we incentivize infrastructure, because we can say to a developer, we're going to guarantee up to this amount, we will help you build your project, as long as they are within these elements that we agree upon. So with that, we're recommending that the CRA Advisory Board offer this incentive to Lakewire Apartments in addition to their TIF. The next steps would be, because of the size of that value, it would have to go to the commission as an agreement. In terms of that agreement, we would be working out just the steps on how they would be able to receive those funds. They would likely be reimbursements as they hit milestones of certain points of construction, and we would have to make sure that the commission accepts the terms of that agreement. So I'll stand for any questions. Greg Wilkerson, is here with Lakewire Apartments if you'd like to hear any updates from him.
So we're in control of the money that is going there, going to the specific items because of the agreement. And it would be based on reimbursement. So if it costs less, then we would be giving less.
That's true.
But if it costs more, they will take care of it.
That's true. Yes.
Cost more above that,
Of this amount,
of that
yes.
number.
Will there be an apportionment, because it was multiple infrastructure items, like the stormwater, the
Street
electrical, the three-phase. Will it be apportioned that so much is for three-phase, so much for stormwater, or is it just across?
Just across. I think it would be difficult for us because, of course, they won't know until they begin those construction items. It'd be difficult for us to get in and line item, say, you can't exceed this amount for this, you can't exceed this amount. We could, but I think that would be very cumbersome on staff and also for their contractor. We find that even with our incentives, that when they come back for reimbursement on facade and site, they may have exceeded their masonry or their stucco work on the facade, but then they may have come in way under on their sign. So if we gave them an allocation for the stucco work and an allocation for the sign, as long as they don't exceed the total of the facade and site grant award, we're okay, because they're eligible improvements for that entire grant. So I'm treating this very similarly, because if they receive a total allocation not to exceed, and it's any of these elements that they're putting into their proposal, it's in the grant award or the grant agreement that the commission approves, I think we can monitor and make sure it complies with that. As long as we're not paying for the building, and as long as we're not paying for the parking structure, which I think if this were a public parking structure, this would be a no-brainer. But it's not, unfortunately. So we're trying to be creative in incentivizing the development, making sure it can move forward and still provide some public incentive for the project.
The three-phase electricity right there, that to me seems to be another one of those no-brainers. Because it's going to be needed to get anybody over there. So that's some heavy lifting that gets done to help us.
Any questions? We do have Greg's team, Impact Development, and RADA, I forgot for a second. They did provide a pretty thorough explanation of all of the site work and cost estimates that they are expecting will be incurred at the time that they break ground. So that full narrative is attached and in your packet. If there's any questions that you'd like to ask of him or of me.
Would it be helpful to give maybe a status update as to the project? I know we've been here multiple times now. We have some new faces and we've made quite a bit of progress. If everyone would maybe like to hear where we're at with everything. So we are at our third round of comments with the city for our plans. They're imminent now. The biggest delay on all of this is being financed through HUD, which if anybody is familiar with that process, is about an 18 to 24 month underwriting process. Our final application is due next Friday, so we're all hands on deck right now. Everybody's solidified from the vendor standpoint, architect, that's been all set in stone for a while. We're expecting our final review to take 90 days. Our loan closing would then be 30 days after that. And the goal would be we sign documents and we're out here the next day breaking ground. So we're extremely close now. I mean, we're talking 4 or 5 months here before this project gets off the ground. This is a huge, huge impact to the project. As you can imagine, that 18 million number that was up there is not 18 million anymore. Things continue to change and get more expensive, so we really appreciate the help that everyone here has been willing to provide for the project. I think Valerie kind of nailed it talking about the walkability to Bonnet Springs Park. We really see this site as a continuation of that, and just being realistic, as I mentioned earlier, the whole reason why we wanted to do this project was because of the walkability to Bonnet Springs and downtown. We think it's perfectly situated between those two locations, and so anyway, just giving the kind of the backstory where we're at, we're really close here. I'm ready to see this thing get off the ground. It's great to see on the south side of us that the tile site is now moving dirt. It's only going to be a benefit to us. So we're fully committed to this project, and we're ready to see it through. So I just wanted to thank everybody also, again, for all the support. I know it's been a long time coming, and we're excited to see this thing get off the ground.
Yes, and I had concern about this when I first heard about it, but because of the close proximity with the school, is there any coordination with Polk County Public Schools or?
So as part of, and this is in the packet, there are additional crosswalks that are going to be going in, and that was pointed out during our permit review, was that there are going to be implications during school hours when we have traffic coming in and out. So
Because that area, that's the parent line, that traffic that goes right in front of where you're building. And I know I even had asked the question before, which should come up at some point in time, whether the city's going to be willing to open that Lake Wire Drive where it's complete around again. But the school issues.
I haven't heard anything else about Lake Wire Drive. We would fully support it, obviously. It would make things a lot easier there. The nice thing about our parking garage is it is a on-grade entrance on both levels. That site, if everyone's familiar, slopes very much to the south. And so we have an exit that is on the east side, which will be out of the flow of traffic. I think in the mornings, I can't recall exactly how traffic flows in, but I believe it comes north and then heads back to the east for drop-off.
Yeah, they come in, well, I know after school, they actually come in off Peachtree and come in and around to that little access street just north that parallels George Jenkins.
Okay.
Yeah, which is another question. That street that's behind, that parallels George Jenkins, that comes into a dead end on right before you get to MLK.
I think that's Magnolia.
Yeah. How's that going to be used?
We'll have one side of our parking garage that exits there. We haven't faced any kind of resistance in terms of overbearing traffic. I mean, there's, I think, 40 plus spots that are on that top side. I don't envision this being like a major traffic issue. It's not like we're putting another, we're not putting retail where people are coming in and out all day. I think there will be added congestion. I think that's the nature of any sort of urban infill project is if you want people, you're going to add congestion, but the goal was to add a walkable site. So our hope is people are living here that are working downtown and not jumping in their cars to go, drive 3 blocks, right? I would envision that, we have people that are working in this office that are living in our site. So, naturally urban infill is going to cause congestion, and we're happy to if there are requirements to look at what we can do there. But for now, having our traffic studies done, I don't see anything that's going to cause a major issue. We're still in review here, but I think we've kind of gotten past that point from a site plan approval perspective.
It's good. From there to downtown, it's good. Bicycle riding, and maybe the city would even extend its squeeze route, and people could take the squeeze in from there. So
that's what we don't want parking. We don't want additional cars. So we would love to have people walking and biking to and from. So that's the goal with the site. So I think in long term, like my vision with development in general is that vehicles are going to become more and more less frequent as, we increase walkability and more dependability on single car family households. So, but yeah, no, I appreciate the concern. It's just a natural concern that comes with this type of development.
And I ask about the school thing because, there have been several projects on the south side of town that there was a lot of consternation because of proximity to schools and traffic. And And maybe it's the neighborhood that you haven't gotten that kind of feedback just because, but okay.
I have a question, just kind of so in our retreat, we kind of learned a lot more about TIF, thanks to Valerie's educating us and helping us understand. So going back to this discussion that we had, I'm curious to know, because I just want to make sure that we are all aware that is this better, comparable? Do you think at the end of the day when we sent you back saying, no, we're not going to give you what you asked for, how do you feel about this opportunity versus the TIF if that had gone through?
So I think it's very comparable. When we're looking at this, the way that the analysis is done, it all comes down to really dollars and cents, right? When we're looking at TIF, what TIF does for us is it naturally increases our NOI at the end of the day, right? Because those are monies that are not coming out in those 5 years. And so what that does is when we are appraised and HUD looks at this, they say, okay, your NOI goes up by X amount. That then reduces the capital requirement for the project, right? What this does is HUD treats this as a equity partner that reduces our capital stack as well. So they're kind of one and the same. This is unique for us. In most TIF scenarios and most developments, the developer is selling the project immediately. We are not. This is an opportunity zone project as well. So we have a requirement to hold this land for at least 10 years. We will have another 7 years at least of holding it. And so we will last through that TIF process. And so most developers are looking at it from the perspective of how much can I gain on the sale by having this additional NOI that's going to the next developer. And we're not looking at it like that. We're looking at how do we reduce all of this is trying to reduce cost in a scenario like Valerie said, where we've got, there aren't many 80 to 90 unit projects that are putting a parking garage up.
Yeah.
And that really, the TIF really helped negate, I'd say like 70-80% of that cost. That was a huge help there. Now we've run into this alley that we have in the middle of the site that has to be vacated, that has all the utilities that run through it. The underground detention is a huge cost. And so that is helping to negate those additional costs to really then conform to what you guys are trying to work on, which is creating this really great urban core. And so from our perspective, overall, they're both, we see it the same way. At the end of the day, it's how much money do we have to come up with, and both routes help reduce that for us.
So thanks.
Any other questions?
This is the site that some units will be affordable housing.
It's
Not
not.
this one.
No. Our partners. And on the same, it would be comparable to the Meriton units, market price. Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll approve.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And I think one other big update I would like to give, I know the existing building is a point of contention for everybody in this room, and I spoke with Bercadius, who our kind of lender liaison is through HUD. The first thing that we are doing with our application, the final application, is we're having them pull all of our environmentals first. And once that review is done, they will then release us to be able to knock down the building. So the plan is to knock down the building prior to loan closing. So I don't want to put a timestamp on it, but I'm hoping 60 to 90 days, which is in the grand scheme of what we've been dealing with for 2 years. And I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you, everybody helping out with that, especially these guys over here on the police department side. They're probably tired of hearing from me. I know it's been a headache. Unfortunately, we were constrained by HUD telling us we cannot disturb the site whatsoever. But we're looking at like an imminent date, and I'm going to email Valerie as soon as I have a date and a demo permit, and invite everybody out. If you want to bring a sledgehammer, you just have to sign a waiver. That's it. But I'm happy to let everybody take a hack at this building. But on a serious note, we really appreciate you working with us on that, because it's just as frustrating it has been for your group, it's been for ours, and we're going to get that thing down as fast as we can here in the next couple of months.
Thank you for the update. That's great. We'll keep working at it, so thank you. Moving on, we can go into discussion items. And there we are. So I wanted to give you all an update that in our downtown budget, we do have a small, very small allotment of funding for arts and entertainment. And most of you are aware of our Art Infusion program. And I sat in a meeting for the outdoor sculpture competition, and that was very fun. We kind of ranked what the next phase of sculptures will be, and Pam Page was giving an update on the sculpture that used to be in Munn Park, and apparently it's been down for a few years. It was damaged by one storm. I don't even remember which one, but one of the storms that came through several years ago, and they've not been able to restore the sculpture. So many of you know Feng Shui, the little guy hanging on the string, and he was balanced, perfectly balanced. They've had him in storage because they've not been able to restore him. So she said that she's had an estimate to have him restored, and they did not have the funding. They didn't have a sponsor. They didn't have any ability to restore him. And I said, well, we have this little pocket of money. Can that help at least move it along? And she went back to the curator at Polk Museum of Art and said, can we get an updated estimate? Because the estimate we have is over a year old. Turns out that the estimate was $11,130. So our $10,000 is able to help contribute and restore Feng Shui and put him back in the park. So I wanted to make sure you all knew that we were able to allocate those funds.
That's awesome. I miss that so much. It's
to
the
put
most
that.
amazing thing.
Make sure it's Terry's face.
But we've got him sent off. It took a minute. Carlos was very diligent in trying to make sure our funds were working so that they could put down the deposit for the restoration. So we were able to make that work. And I did want to make sure with Pam, I said, even with the park renovation and redesign, that he will stay in Munn Park. He doesn't get moved to a building. Yeah. So she said, yes, he will stay in the park. So that was something that CRA will be a small part in contributing and putting
That's
back.
cool.
I wanted to make you all aware of that.
Oh, we got to have a party when he comes back.
When he comes back. So that was a small thing we could do to help bring
tight ropes that we walk on.
Yeah, right. We all walk on the tightrope. We already do, so it'll be a representation of what we do.
Do a toast.
And do a toast, yeah. So
Shots.
the second item I wanted to just discuss and get some feedback on is an inquiry I received in Midtown, and this was, it brought up a larger discussion that I wanted to hear what the advisory board's thoughts were before proceeding with any type of program revision, because we are going to be bringing back some incentive revisions for you to review. And this was a home-based business that was in the gray area. So our residential incentives we have administered by our housing division, and then our commercial incentives, they must be commercially zoned, and they're eligible for all of the improvements we have there. So this was a home-based business, and she was just seeking some help with her home ALF, assisted living facility, and she had all of her licensing and registration. Everything was legal and legit. She just needed help with a generator and a fence and some additional improvements. And I thought, well, there's nothing wrong with this if we brought it to you all. However, these are improvements that have to stay with the real estate. She sells her property, what does that mean for the future homeowner? And then how does this preclude an accountant who works from home that needs an upgrade to his air conditioner? How does this preclude someone who wants upgrades to their windows? And does this then become a larger residential incentive program? So I wanted to hear thoughts on home-based business incentives and if we should just stick with residential structural curb appeal incentives, or should we be evaluating home-based business incentives? Because if we incentivize one, we set a precedent that others will want the same. And I think it leaves room for potential problems. So I'm seeing head nods. I'm seeing head
I just think,
nods.
yeah, you're gonna get in the weeds.
Yeah.
Pretty far with some of these that I know a lot of those areas, like in the Dixieland area, that are residential, also business, and then how do you say yes to this project and no to that project? And I think it's a massive gray area that's going to get real sticky quick.
And I don't want to, also, we would have the extra layer of review at the zoning level and making sure that we're not incentivizing them easily converting into a commercial use when they should be staying residential. So, okay.
I think my response is similar but also different at the same time. I think if there was clarity, very specific clarity about what is and is not an available opportunity for incentive, then we would probably benefit the small business community in an impactful way. I think to say it's going to get sticky and it's going to be difficult, that would be on us to make sure that it doesn't. I think if we say these are qualifying opportunities, these are the only things, and there has to be a specific process that a business has to go through, maybe a certain amount of revenue generated by the business or a certain number of years in business or a certain, kind of qualification that they can, so we can legitimize that this is not a home improvement, but it is an essential, these seem like essential requests for the business to operate and be successful, right? And I think that there's ways, I believe that there would be ways to be able to identify what those things are and what they are not on the front end. So I would just suggest that we don't just toss it out and say no, but think about ways that we can make sure it's very, very clear. Obviously, legal would look at it and do all the things that they would need to do, because I think that there is a growing need for acknowledgement of the value and impact that home-based businesses have in our community. So I wouldn't want to just toss the baby out with the bathwater.
I think the zoning, though, is the issue. If they can then, in 1 year, turn the property over and it's now home.
And we would, I think that would be on us for our review of improvements to make sure they're not making improvements that would easily convert it into a non-conforming use. My only concern is what are we meeting in our redevelopment goals by incentivizing that home-based business? What are we accomplishing? I think our residential programs we're helping improve property values. The Fix It Up program was exactly that. It was a refresh or essentially a refresh of the face of the building. I want to bring back something, but I need to review it internally first. That would be part of that. But it wouldn't be for a home-based business. It would be a structural repair and a cosmetic repair for residential structures and properties.
That would probably be the way I would like to look at it, because even under IRS standards, when somebody's filing their own little space for home-based business, they really have to specify that particular space. And like you said, if somebody moves out.
Bixby voice privacy contents have been updated.
No, thank you. Even when you mute it. But, and also, and if you get too far in this, it kind of opens a can of worms for, I don't know, pretenders.
Right.
Versus just sticking with residential improvement.
Yeah.
But just a residential improvement for them, especially, if they're staying there. And then if they move out, they sell, they're going to sell it as a residential home.
Right.
So I like it from the side of the just residential improvement versus trying to tag it as helping with a home-based business.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to confirm that because I've had a very strong request for this particular one, and if I were scoring it as a brand new application, it wouldn't score very high because the home and everything is in great shape. It's just the need for this particular operator to continue operating. She needs a generator and she needs some fencing because of the business, the ALF. And I thought that's just not enough. It's just not enough. So I wanted to hear that feedback from you all.
Is the generator needed specifically for that business? If they didn't have that business, they wouldn't need that generator?
She's got men in her house that she takes care of, and they have, she's got hospital beds and.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's needed for the medical, for the, oh gosh.
Oxygen.
Oxygen, thank you.
I think they're all mentally challenged, the people that live there.
It's a great, she has a great setup, and she takes very good care of her home. It's just she needs this assistance to be able to continue providing for this one. I think it's just one that needs the oxygen.
I almost feel like the fencing, no, but the generator, yes. Like the business use case, to me, there's a difference. Like I wouldn't, that's why I'm saying, like, some things, I obviously, I'm fine with whatever you guys decide. I just, for the sake of what are we accomplishing, I think we're accomplishing something that is the economic development and prosperity for those in our community that we serve. Because I always say entrepreneurship is a pathway out of poverty. So there's a possible way that we could encourage that without doing all of the things that everyone is asking for. We can't give every single thing. I agree. It's definitely opening up a can of worms. I'm just not one of those people who says, oh well, that's just going to be hard, so let's not do it. I would just think that we could give it a little bit more consideration before we don't consider it. And then we could probably come to the point where we say no at the end, but I feel like I think there's an opportunity to explore it.
I don't know that we're the right place. There must be some place that they could go for that assistance, but I don't know enough.
Because what happens to that generator?
It stays with the home.
And some homes can do that completely on their own. Like there's some, I know my ex-mother-in-law needed oxygen at the end of her life, and they had to install that on their own to provide constant 24/7 power to the home. That is a value of that home now. It stays with the home. So it doesn't necessarily change the use of the home. It's a residential improvement, but is it meeting the redevelopment goals?
Okay.
That's what I'm struggling with. And so I'm hearing that each of you are struggling too. If I were to bring that to you as a special case, it may not necessarily be in this realm. So let's work on it, because the next item is small business technical assistance. And this is has been developing, and I wanted to make sure you all were updated before I bring it to you for an action item, and I didn't want it to be a brand new item. So the Chamber of Commerce came before the commission in August of last year, made a presentation for some funding commitment that be made to bring in some new services to our community. And those services being provided by the Tampa Bay Black Business Investment Corporation, BBIC for short, and Prospera, which is also known as Hispanic Business Initiative Fund, Inc., for short, Prospera, both of which I was familiar with in my time in Tampa and Hillsborough County, and they do phenomenal services in the minority, small business-owned entrepreneur realm, focusing on African American businesses and Hispanic businesses, owned businesses. And what they provide, Prospera is strictly focusing on technical assistance, financial coaching, business plans for Hispanic-owned entrepreneurs and businesses, whereas the BBIC, they can do the same technical coaching, business plans, financial literacy, access to capital, and that access to capital leads into their loan funding. They also have the ability, and they have loan funds set up for microloan access for operating capital, construction loan, whatever that business may need. So apparently they had been in discussion with our Chamber of Commerce for some time, and this discussion came up at Commission Retreat last year, so in 2021, 22, I guess, because we just had 23's retreat, excuse me. So in 22's strategic planning retreat, this came up as a need in our community, and for specifically those two groups of business owners needing these resources, needing the ability to just get that small gap. Maybe they've already been an entrepreneur, and maybe now they're hitting that year 2, year 3 growth, and they just need just that little extra access to operating cash, or they need assistance in managing credit so they can get to the loan that they need, or they're moving from their home and they need to move into a commercial space, and they just need a little coaching on how to do that.
Or they might need to buy a generator.
You know, any of that could be the case. And they did a lot of great work in Tampa and Hillsborough. BBIC, I know, is in Clearwater, Pinellas County. Pinellas County's economic development team, I know a lot of those people over there and the work that they've done. So Prospera is all over the state. They've been working in Orlando and Orange County, down in Miami. Essentially, wherever they see there's a concentration and a demographic of need, that's where they end up going and start providing their services. So these conversations have been happening prior to my arrival, and there was an awareness that, ironically, our districts are those concentrations of need. So the technical assistance is to help our businesses just keep moving forward, keep doing what they're already doing well, and just help them keep moving forward with their business plans and to be successful. The reason there's a connection with the CRA is because we have a lot of incentive applications, and we have a lot of conversations with small business owners where they're just not ready to receive our incentives. They're not ready to spend the money for a project, a construction project, because they don't have it, or they need us to pay for the project as it goes. And we are not set up to do that. We can't be the loan, we can't be the bank. And we take a lot of risk in doing that, and it's not our place. You know, these are tax dollars. We have to be guardians of these tax dollars, but we want to make sure they go to these businesses. So we need that partnership with someone that can help give them this coaching and give them this assistance that they need so they can get the access to these incentives. So we've been working very diligently since I arrived. Brian and Jason kind of led the charge and said, okay, Valerie, here are the individuals from BBIC, here's Prospera, here's the chamber. Let's see if we can figure this out. So I've drafted some agreements with both. And I've said, okay, how often can you come in? How often can you report? Can you be very diligent in working in Midtown CRA and downtown? I don't know that we have the funding to contribute in Dixieland, but can you also help Dixieland? And be very strategic. We have to have you stay within the CRAs because that's where the funding is going to come from to help you be here. So we're working through the details of that, and I have a very solid standing of what those two agreements look like. And I want to be able to propose those to you all at next month's meeting and see if I can get your approval. But this is to provide a baseline for a financial wellness program that each of these agencies can come in and start providing these services. It doesn't have to be limited to our CRA districts, but that's where I'm asking them to focus. And they would provide, location-wise, they would start providing those services from our Chamber of Commerce, and I'm asking Dr. Sally to work with them in providing those services at the well.
So the money would be for what specifically?
For them to be able to come here and at least provide 4 seminars every quarter.
So it's paying for people, it's paying
for their team.
Yeah, to put on a class or assistance.
And one-on-one counselings and making sure they're doing their marketing.
And it would be free for the business.
And free for everyone that participates.
Wonderful.
Would they be allowed to record those classes and conferences if somebody couldn't make it, that
I would assume we can arrange for some of that.
So that way, like, and granted, I know that you're paying for their, but so you never know when that person's going to need it if they can't make
Right.
that
And
class
that's-
or that next day that somebody comes and says,
That's what the one-on-one sessions are for, too. So if the individual couldn't come to the training sessions, they could then request the one-on-one with each of
Will
the
they be setting up a Lakeland office? Or are
That's-
they going to work out of Tampa
So each of their offices, they have multiple
and
offices.
Orlando? Yeah.
So this funding agreement would be for them to come here, and then they would make their schedule available on what the concentration of appointments they can get. So as they move forward, if they find that there's a high demand and they need to set up a permanent office, they would. But this is just to get them to come here
It would be,
on a routine basis.
it would not be requiring them to be based out of Lakeland. It's just to provide the services to us from where they already are.
And to come here on a routine basis.
What kind of investment are they asking for?
So their initial investment was pretty high. It was about $800,000 for a 3-year period. So we've been working through the details. I've gotten it down because we can't contribute to their loan fund for BBIC. I think that was a pretty slippery slope for us. We can't guarantee loans because we couldn't do it ourselves. We would have already done that. So I've gotten it down to where we can contribute for their services and combined. I didn't bring the numbers because I just wanted to have the conversation first. But I think for the 3-year period, it's about $600,000 between the two agencies. And this is just a guarantee that they come to Lakeland every quarter. There's a minimum number of services that they offer every quarter. They have to report it back to us every quarter. It wouldn't be just the blank check to say, okay, we've got an agreement, they're coming. It would be a milestone of information that they have to provide to us. So
And
The chamber's also contributing?
the chamber is going to be helping them get their loan funding. So they're going to be part of this at the table, that they are our partner.
there's nobody in Lakeland that offers these kind of resources.
I think there is, but not to the level that what they already can do. BBIC and Prospera already do. And I think that's something that I'm starting to peel back the layers of who the other partners are. I think SCORE is one, CFBDC is one. I don't know how frequent or how often their level of technical assistance is focusing on African Americans and Hispanic owned business.
So this isn't the time you want to talk about it? You want to talk about it when you present it?
Yes, this was an update, so you're getting warm and fuzzy and feeling, yes. So I could have added it to today's agenda, but I thought you guys might have been worn out from Peachtree Flats. I apologize, I could have brought both agreements.
And
I'll write my comments.
this is something you said might tie in with the banks that you were meeting with?
Yes, so I've met with OCC, and there are, I can't remember how many banks and CDFIs that have a Community Reinvestment Act obligation to contribute to very much the same areas that are our districts, our Midtown, downtown Dixieland districts. And those obligations to contribute are not just financial. Sometimes they just say that one of their executives is serving on a board, a chamber, Lakeland Vision, something like that, and that's all that they do. So my goal is to work with the chamber in establishing a forum of banks and CDFI representatives in finding ways that they could do better at meeting those CRA obligations in our community, and working through this initiative and making sure that we're providing this loan pool and direct incentives, not just our incentives, but making sure that their resources are available to these districts. So that's just a continuing conversation that I'm just one advocate for all of the zip codes and census tracts that we represent. And I think that we should have a forum of all of us together talking about what they each do now, because they like to come to us and tell us how good their ratings are. But I want to see how many loans they're actually giving out in our districts. And how much are they? And what businesses are receiving them.
When you bring those to us, will they be coming and doing a presentation about what they would be doing, or are you going to be speaking for them?
I can invite them, yes. That's why I wasn't ready for that today, because it would just be me, and I would just be talking about the value of their services. So I can bring them. I think the chamber is also a big advocate for their services because they see the value of what we have. A lot of agencies spread out over the entire county that offer very similar services. I think the value of us investing in this is bringing that service to Lakeland. And if they want to expand and offer in Polk County, that's a wonderful thing. But bringing the value right here to our districts is what we want.
So in essence, what they're doing, they're working with prospective entrepreneurs or new business owners, because businesses that are part of the chamber, didn't the chamber provide some of the services that we're talking about to their members?
Not to this level, no. Not to the
But this is
technical
more-
They
assistance.
don't have the expertise at the chamber. The chamber employees don't necessarily have the expertise to provide one-on-one financial coaching and credit repair and the level of support.
And I think part of the challenge is that the people that these groups would target are ones that are not reachable by our standard entrepreneurial systems. And it's going to take relationships.
Yeah, that's what I meant by, like brand new, ground level, conceptual, that kind of thing, trying to get to the startup point.
And I think that there's value in seeing that we have a lot of entrepreneurs that are doing very well. It's when they hit a certain milestone of growth that's when they reach challenges. They're moving out of one startup space and moving into the next space. That's when we see the most challenge at our level, that they hit a renovation roadblock, they hit a budget increase, and they cannot get to that next level of, I need to renovate this space, my budget won't allow for it, I can't get a loan. That's when they need some help and some work.
And they've moved to Winter Haven and Bartow.
And then they
I can list 5 wonderful companies that they're not in Lakeland because it's too expensive. And there's nothing that they can grab onto for loan assistance, things like that. Like,
Great, yeah, great point.
So I have lots of thoughts, but since we're not talking about it today, I'll just wait.
This is more of an introduction.
Introduction. So the companion, I wanted to clarify 2 things. Even though their focus is minority-owned businesses, it doesn't limit any other businesses from using their resources. They're open to everyone. So our only limitation is because we are contributing to ask for their services, it's the geographic area in which we want to see that they're focusing their efforts on. The second part of that, the companion to this, is I will be proposing some adjustments to our incentives so that any recommended letter or business that comes through as a recommendation, there's 2 components. We're working on some properties, if they're available through the CRA and we publicly notice disposition and they get a recommendation through the program, they may get an opportunity to redevelop that property. Or if they get a high recommendation from either of these agencies, they may get a higher incentive through our programs. So those are some elements of revisions that I want to bring back to you all for consideration, that we are now, as a result of these services being provided, those businesses will now be eligible for additional funds because they've been provided some level of coaching that gets them to the point where now they've been recommended or endorsed to receive them.
For Prospera and BBIC, just for so I can walk away for this month and think about this, where is their funding? Since they're not located in Polk County or in Lakeland, where do they exist? How do they get their funding? Who are they going to answer to? Who is their board?
Okay, well, those are a lot of questions that I don't have, but I can send you all of that information, Chrisanne. They are both, Prospera is statewide, and their board, each of their boards are appointed, and they are bank representatives, they are community members, they're community leaders. They are funded in multiple counties, so each of those counties, agencies, public, city, governments fund them for the services they provide in those respective jurisdictions. So this is not a new game for them, new rodeo, I should say. So this is just new to Lakeland, new to Polk County.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to share more for those that want to dig deeper now and before next month's meeting. So you can get some questions out and we can talk more about it individually.
helps
questions
to
on
get a
that.
heads up. Thank you for that.
Yes, I knew it would be a little bit to wrap around. So.
Comments from the public?
Since we're at the public comments, I do want to recognize Officer Hammersley, and Officer Buttry. Our CRA officers are here as guests.
Hello.
And I appreciate all of their work. We've had quite a bit of work with some property across from our favorite park, and there's been some activity at the CSX property, the real estate property that is right behind the 5 Points roundabout, with about 15 campers.
There were right around 20 camps.
20 camps.
At Bonnet.
Not
Right across from Bonnet?
Across from Bonnet. So they've,
The old train station.
I don't know if it was the train
No,
station.
it's the CSX property
It's the
between
CSX.
Main Street where the concrete plant is,
Oh, okay.
all the way up to George Jenkins.
Just a lot of activity that we never see. We drive past it, we never know it's there. And it's certainly still very prevalent in the community. So between that and all of their work on checking our properties and just monitoring activities, they're certainly out in the community, and we appreciate all the work that you're doing. Thank you. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? Are you ready to take pictures?
Well, comments from our board members?
Yeah.
Anything
Any
else?
comments?
And I'm looking and seeing we're going back to 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I
Oh,
saw
yes.
that.
Good
I saw
point.
that.
Good point.
I was changing my calendar like, ooh, wait a minute.
Whoops, sorry. Yes, so the reason for that is this room isn't available. Both rooms, actually. We tried. We gave it a good shot. We can't keep it at 10 o'clock, unfortunately, so we need to go back to 3 o'clock on the same meeting day, but it seems that our time isn't going to work going forward. So also going into June, I wanted to make sure you all knew that they're going to be renovating and replacing this equipment. So Andrew's probably listening, and I'm sure he's very excited to get some of this equipment replaced and updated, and that's when they start making those adjustments. So after our meeting on May 4th, I believe there's one meeting that night, that's the Neighborhood Association Coalition meeting. That Friday, they're going to break down this equipment, and that's why we can't be in this room or next door for that full month. They expect to be done, I believe, in June, and so we can return in July, but we're gonna keep that as a placeholder that we go into the Lakeland Electric meeting rooms so that we can be recorded and live streamed for our guests listening.
You'll give us instructions how to find there.
Yes. Yeah, but we have a few months. I just wanted to put it out there so you knew that we would have a location change coming in June.
I had a curiosity about the property where the second DCA used to be, just driving through there recently and wondering I know it's state-owned, but it's a big property right in the Midtown area. I wonder if there were any intentions for it or right across from the Searstown. Old Searstown.
I don't know that I have, I can check with our development review team and see if they know. I think I did see something come through that may have been proposed, but I don't know how real, if it's gone any further.
Okay.
I can find out, follow up if there is anything moving forward on that.
Where's the project for the Ledger parking lot stand? What's the status on that?
There is not any movement on the city side. I think that I recall a conversation with the property owner representative in December, right in the holidays, where he shared interest of coming to us at some point, and we had a discussion much like what you saw with Peachtree Flats, where I'd like to do a hybrid TIF and infrastructure agreement, but I really wanted to vet that for you all before getting too far along. And I don't know that we've had any other updates from the cities.
What about on the apartment project on Olive Street? There was a apartment proposal project on East Olive Street.
I'm not familiar. I'll have to
I
follow
went
up.
to a community meeting, and then I think a first reading may have been done, a presentation was done at a city commission meeting back in August or September. Are you familiar?
There's some multifamily
Yeah.
developments in that area
Right.
that I think are still working through some site plan review
Okay.
processes. Utility constraints, some other things that are moving in a
About
good
a-
direction, but
250-unit complex.
And Christine, to your point on the courthouse building, so that was sold to a private entity. So that is, Valerie's probably right, and that's primed for something redevelopment related, but as of today, I don't think the city's going to have a role.
Yeah, I think I heard something, but I don't recall where, if it was a concept plan or if it, I'll have to find out and send you if there is something on our end. Anything else? Does everyone have time for the photo?
If we're quick.
If we're quick, all right.
Where do you have us, where are you having us go?
We're just going to meet in the lobby, and I was thinking around City Hall. It's Jamin with communications.
Perfect.
He's going to guide us where he thinks the best